I'm your wife, for goodness sake. Of course I should be able to steal from your parents' house.
r/anti.
I'm a thief, baby!
Hey there, Mr. Redder here.
And Miss Sticky Fingers herself, me.
Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen, my wife, gets busted stealing from my parents' house. Huge mistake. Background. My wife, who's 28, and I, 30 male, as well as my brother and his wife, went to visit our parents as we hadn't seen them in a while. My parents, who are 57, had a box of $300 ginseng in the fridge to be given as a gift for their close friend's wedding anniversary tomorrow. We know this because it came up in conversation during lunch. They also told us to help ourselves to anything in the fridge, but to not touch the ginseng for obvious reasons. The problem came when a few hours later, my parents called us in a panic, saying that they couldn't find the ginseng and asking if anyone had seen it. I didn't take it, and at first I thought they just misplaced it somewhere. However, they insisted that they both agreed on not moving it out of the fridge drawer for that exact reason. All of us denied taking it, and the conversation got more heated when my father started yelling that someone must have taken it, since it only went missing when we came to visit. All of us continued to deny taking it, with my wife being really quiet, and my father said that if it doesn't turn up, he'd have to have everyone's belongings checked. That was when my wife admitted that she took it. Apparently, it was some popular brand that my in-laws mentioned, and she wanted to give it to them, and she thought that no one would notice since it was an inconspicuous place in the fridge. My mother-in-law later called and said that my parents overreacted over such an inconsequential thing and screamed at me that I was a jerk for not defending my wife. The thing is, in my opinion, it wasn't a small thing. My wife literally stole hundreds of dollars from my parents and tried to lie her way out of it. While I agree that my parents shouldn't have started yelling and accusing us, I feel like my wife was in the wrong for taking the ginseng in the first place. This situation has caused a lot of friction, and we haven't been speaking since coming home. Am I the jerk? Update. After making the post, I thought a lot more about the situation. I realized after reading the comments that this indeed wasn't a one-time situation. Things in our house like face creams, kitchen utensils, and even household tools would go missing, and I would just believe my wife's excuses. I feel like such an idiot for not realizing it sooner, and honestly, I can't believe she took advantage of my trust like that. I guess a part of me refused to believe the truth, which was how she thought she could get away with it this time. When I brought up divorce, she immediately threatened to call the police to arrest me for being violent, when I had never done anything like that, so that I could never find a job again. So needless to say, my lawyer is being called, and this marriage will be over very soon. I've also apologized to my parents for all this awful behavior, and they've accepted. To be honest, this is probably the best ending, and I'm kind of glad this situation happened before it went on any longer. I'm incredibly done with my hopefully soon ex-wife and her side of the family, whose mother called me again yesterday entirely remorseless and called me a childless mama's boy. Thank you everyone for all the help and comments. And to clarify a few things, from what I'm aware, mother-in-law was aware of my wife's actions, especially since she had done this sort of thing before, taking things from our house to give to them, and didn't see anything wrong with it since neither of them like my parents. And since it was going to be a short visit, like 2 hours tops, she thought no one was going to notice the missing ginseng before we left. Not the jerk. Your wife literally stole a $300 item from your parents, and her and her mother-in-law are mad that she got caught. Honestly, if my husband did that, I'd be having a long think about continuing the marriage. Not the jerk 100%. Honestly, it would have me rethinking the marriage, since she's revealed herself to be a liar and a thief, and I don't blame your parents for yelling. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you divorce her or not? Please let us know.
What is it with people threatening to tell lies about you when you break up with them? Like, do you really think that's gonna win my heart back?
I'll meet the call count, but I won't make the calls count. I worked at a call center for a collection agency for nearly 5 years. Anybody that has worked in this type of environment knows that there are all sorts of targets that are expected to be met. The daily, the monthly, whatever. One of our targets was to make a certain number of calls per day. I believe it was 120 calls. Naturally though, the more contact you would make with debtors, the less time there was to make other calls. It's usually not an issue, but some days you might make significantly more contact than others, and sometimes your call count might be like 2/3 of what it should be. We would get regular updates on the call count, and our manager would let us know if we were on track, and at the end of the day, they would give you the final results. I found it very annoying when you would have a successful day collecting debts and generating revenue for the company, only to have a manager dwell on your call count. Any protest, such as, "Yes, I didn't meet the call count requirement, but hey, look at the revenue I generated today." It doesn't matter. The target must be met. Even if it wasn't a successful day, but I knew I still ended up spending much time in contact with these debtors in attempt to collect, I would ask managers to review my talk time to see that the efforts were being made to do what we're hired to do. It doesn't matter. The requirements must be met. Now, to be clear, a call only counted if someone picked up or the call went to a voicemail box that wasn't full. The system was unable to register events otherwise, meaning if you were to make hundreds of attempts in one day, only a fraction are registered. Everyone is aware of this, but it didn't matter to the company. Well, I was tired of the unfairness of it all. It also doesn't help that the company was grossly skimming our bonuses that our department's client provided to us as a reward for successfully collecting on these debts. It was really obvious when our bonuses became random numbers when it was only possible for them to be in multiples of 5. Frustrated with this literal theft and underappreciation of successful collection, the whole point of the job, I decided to comply with the call count expectations and never be under the target again. I created a notepad file with a list of all of the telephone numbers that went straight to voicemail. These are often numbers that have blocked us, or presumably the owner of the number has set it up as away or something like that. From then on, I made sure to make 15 to 20 calls per hour that would register, implying that even more calls were being made that they just couldn't see due to the way the system registered calls. I would spread these calls out so my activity wouldn't seem suspicious and would spend all day reading articles on the internet. Naturally, the revenue I had been generating decreased by about 80%. "How come you're not collecting?" "Well, manager, you can see I am surpassing my call count target and my talk time is very low, so I'm just not getting the opportunities to do so." It should be noted that whatever I was collecting after doing so was really easy. The people whose accounts we received who could pay and wanted to pay anyway. Often these people would call us, so I just relied on that to make it appear like I was doing anything at all. They started giving me lower value portfolios to work, which was fine by me. "You're stealing my bonus, the very incentive I have to do more work than the bare minimum anyway for a paycheck." I honestly thought I was quiet quitting, but no. I had a reputation as a valued member for our department and company, so no one wanted to fire me. I guess they just chalked up my lack of success to the bad portfolios they were assigning me. Steal my bonuses and dwell on a target that would be better judged as a marker of effort rather than an end-all be-all, and I couldn't care less. I was getting paid to read. This went on for nearly 2 years until I had to leave for mental health reasons. Am I the jerk for canceling the vacation when I found out that my stepdaughters hid my daughter's passport to get her to stay home? I've been married to my wife Beth for 5 years. I have a biological daughter named Jessica, she's 18. And I also have 2 stepdaughters named Monica and Leia. They're 25 and 28. Both are single moms and live with us currently. There's been issues about my stepdaughters asking my daughter to babysit their kids. Jessica didn't have a problem with it at first since this is what she does to earn money. But since her stepsisters don't pay her much, she just refused to babysit. We worked this out by having my wife take care of paying for the babysitting. I planned a family vacation for 3 days and everyone wanted to go. However, both Monica and Leia suggested that Jessica stay home and watch the kids, since Beth doesn't want her grandkids to come. They said it's because the kids are used to Jessica and hiring another babysitter would cause issues, and also that Jessica isn't too fond of our destination, but it was obvious that Jessica wanted to go. They insisted, and Beth offered to pay her double, and there was just a lot of back and forth until I demanded that they stop bringing it up. We were supposed to go last week, but when everyone had packed their bags and it was time to go, Jessica found out that she didn't have her passport on her. We searched her bag, then went home and searched there. Beth and my stepdaughters kept insisting that we go back to the airport or else we'd miss our flight. They insisted that Jessica stay at home with the kids. They even told the new babysitter to go home because she was no longer needed. I refused to go and kept searching for the passport until Monica admitted that she helped Leia hide Jessica's passport to get her to stay home with the kids. I was livid. I tried to get her to tell me where it was, but she said Leia had it. Leia denied, so I threatened to cancel the vacation, and that's when they gave it back. I decided to actually cancel the vacation and blew up at both of them and berated them. They stayed upstairs for a while, and Beth refused to speak to me, and said that I punished my stepdaughters for worrying about their kids and wanting them to stay with someone they know. I got told I overreacted and ruined the trip for everybody. Edit. Kicking the stepdaughters out is not possible since my wife co-owns the house that we currently live in. Not the jerk. And to be honest, I would have kicked your wife and lazy no-good stepkids out right then and there and ended the marriage. If they were 12, I might understand this level of entitlement and immaturity, but in their late 20s? And what on earth is wrong with your wife? You should have roasted them for pulling this BS. Not the jerk. You don't just have a stepdaughter problem, you have a wife problem too. I would rethink your current family situation and how your daughter is being treated. Am I the jerk for insisting my partner skip a work event? I, 32 female, have been with Paul, 34 male, for 4 years. A year ago, we were in an accident. Paul was driving and 100% at fault. Paul had no injuries, but I broke my back. I was in a back brace for months and I'm still going to PT. After I was out of the brace, I started going to the gym and running, and at this point, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in. I'm really proud of the progress I've made. A month ago, I found out that there was a 10K race on the 1-year anniversary of the accident in a mountain town about 3 hours away. I thought this would be a fun and positive way to spend the day and celebrate my recovery. I suggested this idea to Paul, my 2 best friends, and their partners. The plan was to drive there Friday afternoon, run the 10K on Saturday morning, and spend the rest of the weekend exploring the town. Everyone was on board. Paul recently started a new job. It's fully remote, and he hasn't met his coworkers yet. He's supposed to fly out to San Francisco to meet his team the Monday after our weekend trip. We knew this when we made our plans. A few days before our trip, Paul told me his bosses now want him to be in San Francisco on Sunday because they got box seats to a Giants game, and they want him to come, so he would no longer be able to come on our trip. I thought he was joking because he likes to make fun of corporate culture, but he was serious. I told him to explain the situation and that they can't expect him to be available with less than a week's notice. He said he had already told them yes and he didn't want to backtrack. So I asked him to tell them he forgot he had a wedding to attend or something like that, and he said he didn't want to turn down the offer because it would be a really good networking opportunity. I suggested he join on Friday as planned and drive back late Saturday and early Sunday to catch his flight. He said no because he didn't want to drive 6 hours round trip just for one day. I suggested he fly out of the regional airport nearby, which he also shot down because it would be too expensive. He makes good money, so this wouldn't be a financial burden. I was almost in tears at this point, pleading him to come and telling him how important it was to me. When I realized he wasn't going to budge, I stopped trying to convince him, but I did let him know I was hurt and angered by his decision. The morning I was supposed to leave, Paul was trying to be affectionate and sweet towards me, but I'm still pretty upset, so I was admittedly pretty mean to him, and I rejected all his attempts at affection. Now he's upset with me for ruining our last day together and also for pressuring him to skip his work event. I think he's a jerk for prioritizing a baseball game over a celebration of my recovery, especially considering he's the one that caused my injury in the first place. My friends are on my side, but I'd like some unbiased perspective. Not the jerk on the initial part, but then you said, especially considering he's the one that caused my injury in the first place. That sounds really, really nasty. Guilt-tripping him for the rest of your life with him won't be good emotionally. Is the whole celebration of your progress a moment to rub his nose in the fact he caused it? Good luck. OP, you are such a bigger and nicer person than I am. Not once did you remind him that the trip was to celebrate your progress in recovery after he broke your back. I would have. Having said that, he was provided a couple of alternatives that were more than reasonable. And why is he paying for a flight and travel for business? Not the jerk. But he has shown you where you rank in his priorities. I would imagine if you look back in your relationship, you'll find you've taken the backseat more than not. OP. Opinions seem to be pretty evenly divided. I do want to clarify a couple things. I never tried to get Paul to come by saying or implying the injury was his fault. Yes, I was thinking it, but I've never used that against him. There are obviously resentment issues, which is something I'm working through, but I would never say that to his face. A lot of people are saying I am the jerk because I was pressuring him to skip his work event. When I realized how important it was to him, I tried to compromise with him to be able to make both events happen. It was his refusal to compromise that was upsetting. Not the jerk. Paul is the one that ruined the day, not you. He was at fault for the accident that could have been much worse. Thankfully, you're making great progress. It's completely understandable why this event would mean so much to you. Paul shouldn't have agreed to go the day earlier without talking to you first. Instead, he immediately told them he'd be there. He didn't prioritize you at all and is blaming you for the fallout. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. You don't want to wait in the ED? If you insist. I work as a security guard for one of the few hospitals in our city. Besides dealing with combative patients and visitors and doing patrols around the campus, we occasionally get asked to assist with getting people out of their vehicles and escorting them by wheelchair to the emergency department or their appointment at an on-site clinic. Today, a couple of nurses came to our office asking for our help. They had received a call from a gentleman who we will call Gerald, asking for help to get out of their car, as he was in severe pain. I went out with the nurses, pushing a wheelchair and radioing my partner to come assist, as it sounded like it was going to take some extra hands to help him out. It took a little bit for us to find him, but we found him thanks to him blowing his car horn for all to hear. Now, I have interacted with dramatic people before, and this guy was no different. He told us all about how he was in so much pain, how he drove himself all the way over here and couldn't move the car anymore, and how he needed to be treated. We tried to offer help, but he refused to grab our arms or hands to steady himself, relying on the car door and the wheelchair to get himself in it. Once he got himself settled, he asked me to move the vehicle to a better parking spot. After all, he had handicap stickers and he needed the space to get in when he finished his visit here, so I obliged, feeling a little bit odd about the whole situation, and moved his car to a handicap spot near the ED entrance. Gerald got checked in at the ED and we were done with the situation. At least that's what I thought. Boy, were we wrong. Not even 20 minutes later, I get told that this guy wanted to leave and wanted us to take him back to his car. Apparently, he started complaining and moaning about how the wait time was too long. Keep in mind that there were people in the waiting room who had been there for hours. The ED was very full today, and this guy couldn't stand being there for even just a few minutes. I first checked with ED staff because I was worried about the fact that he himself said he couldn't drive. They told me that since they hadn't triaged him and he wanted to leave so soon, they legally couldn't hold him here even if they wanted to, which they didn't care that much since they were already busy with treating their patients. So I went back out to the ED and I asked him point blank if he was really sure he wanted to leave, because I didn't want to be held responsible in case he drove and got into an accident. But he said yes, he wanted to leave right then and there. So I reluctantly pushed him out of the ED and towards his car. This is where my malicious compliance begins. Gerald starts saying, verbatim, "When we get to my car, I'm gonna call the ambulance." Me. Wait, what? Gerald. Yeah, gonna call an ambulance. I can't drive, and I don't like anyone here except for you. They're too slow here, and I'm not gonna spend all night here. Besides, calling an ambulance will get me to a room quicker, and I can get help with my pain. Me. So, you want to call an ambulance to take you to the ED when you're already here at the ED? And all that because the wait time is too long for you? Yeah. Me. You realize that if you call an ambulance, they may just take you back to the waiting area and have you wait there, right? Yeah, I know that. I'm still gonna call. Well, okay, if that's really what you want to do. So after helping the guy to his car, I decided to let him do just that. At that point, there was nothing else I could really do. After all, I'm just a security guard, not his doctor. So I just pushed the wheelchair back inside and went about my business. About 30 minutes later, I'm looking at the security footage, and right there next to the guy's car is an ambulance. My jaw dropped. The guy actually called 911 for an ambulance, and they came. I continued to watch as the EMT workers helped this guy into a gurney and placed him into the ambulance. Then, to my utter shock, they drove off campus. I had thought they were going to drop him off back here, but they left for another hospital. I then realized a couple of things. One, this guy's going to another hospital and going to be gone for who knows how long. Two, when he gets discharged, he's not going to have a ride home because, you guessed it, his car is here at the hospital. Plus, our policy is that if a car is parked in our lot for longer than a few days and we've confirmed that the owner is not here, we have to call the police and report an abandoned vehicle. So this guy is now getting additional costs added to his medical expenses because he took the ambulance, possibly has to wait even longer in another ED before he can even be seen, and he may rack up some fines for abandoning his car depending on how long it's there. All because he didn't want to wait in the ED with everyone else. But hey, I guess 20 minutes was way too much for him. Am I the jerk for taking my garbage out late at night? I'm a newly minted single mom of 2 tornadoes and rarely have the time for everything in my day. I've all but given up doing big cleans while they're awake. Collect garbage, tidying, fixing, all I can do is damage control. Once they go to bed, I put a podcast on and I do the real cleaning. Another tricky side note, my 4-year-old has insomnia and sometimes I have to start a bit later than normal. Kitchen, bathroom, living room, litter boxes, take the garbage out and to the curb once a week. Sometimes I can't get to that point until 11 p.m., on rare occasions 3 a.m. I'm not a monster though. I place my bags gently in the bin and roll it down to the curb. The rolling can be loud and the bins are massive, so I keep it on the grass to cushion some of the noise. My neighbor was so kind to let me know that he called the police because there was someone in the back alley late at night where the bins are stored and picked up on collection day, but the police couldn't be bothered to show up. I told him, that may have been me actually. Don't worry about crimes and that. I'm just trying to get some cleaning done. Today I asked him, hey, we haven't spoken in a while. You guys okay? He was not happy. Well, I'm not used to noisy neighbors who think it's okay to take the garbage out after 6 p.m. I told him that time management can be difficult on my own, but he brushed me off. He said that even my neighbors across the way think little of me. Am I the jerk for cleaning later in the day into the night? Update. He's a bit of a strange old man with a crappy delivery, but I'd like to say, while he may have been rude, he's not a complete jerk. As an apology, he started mowing my front lawn. I came running out to stop him, but his lady was out there giving me grandma eyes, saying, good luck stopping him. I gave them coffee and tea, thanked them profusely, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe my yard was an eyesore. Maybe he's apologizing. Let's find out. We had a big chat about the garbage can noise, and I've apologized profusely. Keep the peace, boys, keep the peace. And I'll just keep my head down from here out, counting down the days to moving back to a real city and not a cliquey old folk suburb town. Not the jerk. Your neighbor is being obnoxious. This is not a big deal, and even if it was, the right move would have been to come talk to you about it. They're passive-aggressive, and I would discount them and anything they say from this point. Am I the jerk for asking my brother for money to fix my car, knowing that it would come out of my niece's college fund? So I, 36 male, have a brother, Mike, who's 44. He has a daughter, Addie, who's 16. For her 16th birthday, Mike bought Addie a used but still very nice car. She totaled it 2 months later in an accident where she was 100% at fault, and Mike did not buy her another one. So far, she's gotten by with Mike's car, but he recently had to take a business trip out of town and was worried about her being home alone without a car. He asked me to lend her my car for a few days as a favor. My wife and I each have one, and it wouldn't be a major inconvenience to me. I reluctantly agreed. When it was time for me to take my car back, Mike told me that Addie had accidentally put diesel fuel in it and that it had died in their driveway. I had it towed to a repair shop and asked for the $1,500, the amount quoted to by my mechanic, from Mike to get it fixed. Mike told me that he would transfer the money soon, and I told him to take as much time as he needed. Later that afternoon, Mike's wife Lisa called me to tell me that the money from my car would be coming out of Addie's already meager college fund. She begged me to let the money go because Addie needs that money for college. She actually started crying, and I started feeling really bad. The thing is, I do have the money to pay for the repairs. I'd have to take it out of mine and my wife's shared savings account. I actually already have with my wife's permission. I would put the money from Mike into that same savings account to restore the original amount. Even so, I told Lisa that Addie needs to have consequences for her actions, and if that means she has less money for college, then that's what that means. She meekly agreed and hung up. Yesterday, I got a text from my sister. She basically called me a selfish jerk for taking money out of Addie's college fund over a stupid mistake. She said that I was being cruel and that she knows I have the money, so I should just bite the bullet and let them keep the money. Now I'm struggling with this dilemma, and I figured that I should get some unbiased perspective. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Addie needs to get a job and pay for something to learn the value of $1. I would say the biggest problem is that it seems like Addie has not been taught correctly about how to be a responsible person with cars. Kids do stupid stuff, but kids are more likely to do stupid stuff when they are not taught correctly by their parents. If she's that way with cars, she's probably that way with other aspects of her life. Again, given that she's 16, I would say that this is her parents' fault for not teaching their daughter correctly. Addie should get a summer job to pay for that $1,500. Her parents obviously work and get by, so I doubt that they would be dependent on her income. Let her pay for it. Depending on how hard she works, you could cut her a break if she's a little short at the end of the summer, or you could make her pay every penny. It shouldn't be coming out of her parents' pocket, your pocket, or her college fund. She's 16 and can drive. She can work. 20 hours a week at $7.25 an hour is $150. It would take her 10 weeks at a minimum wage job to pay you back. Assuming she works June and July, that would be around 8 weeks. It's still May. No excuse. Actually, since she's 16 and the dad asked for the car, the responsibility is 100% on the parents. The parents can choose how it's paid and what the consequences are for Addie, but it's not up to OP to tell them how to parent or where to get the money from. Likewise, it's the parents who have decided it's coming out of the college fund, so really not okay to try and guilt OP about where the money's coming from. That was their own parental decision. The parents need to grow up and take responsibility for their own decisions and responsibilities. Need me to stay back and cover a shift? This will cost you big time. This comes from about 15 plus years ago, when I was, and still am, working with people with disabilities in a community home. It's a great job for those who like it, a terrible one for those who don't, meaning that any staff you meet are either very new or long-term like myself. As a consequence, the turnover rate of staff is high, and replacement staff are slow to be hired, meaning you often find shifts not covered straight away. This is an industry where simply not having a shift filled isn't an option, particularly where I work, in a house with a single day staff and a single night staff, each working 12 shifts on a 7-day spread over a 2-week roster. There are some strict rules regarding hours you can work, intended to avoid burnout, but more used to keep a reign of overtime, which in our industry is paid at plus 70% your hourly rate for the first 3 hours above your 76-hour fortnightly maximum, and plus 100% for any time after that. You can't demand overtime, but if they require you to work longer, they can't not pay you for overtime. Also worth noting is that people we work with are vulnerable, meaning they cannot be left unsupervised. Long story short, you can't go home until your replacement arrives. So back in the early 2000s, we were having problems locating staff. Lots of people working overtime and a lot of fresh faces appearing and disappearing. The house I worked in wasn't difficult in particular. 4 adults with intellectual disability, but there was no support, by which I mean the worker there had to fend for themselves. There was no supervisor in the next building, they were miles and miles away. I'd frequently at this time had to stay back half an hour, waiting for staff to come replace me. I was less than happy with how it was handled each time I called the office to tell them, the night staff haven't arrived, do you know who's booked? To which I'd get the reply, we're still looking, how late can you stay? The obvious answer was, until I'm replaced, but what I often said was, I prefer not to stay after the end of my shift, but that doesn't seem to matter now, so I'll just stay until someone comes. Every time a new face arrived, I'd give them all the information they'd need for the shift, introduce them, walk them through their duties, etc. This would take 20 to 30 minutes. The point being, I don't just jump ship when a staff member arrives to replace me. This is someone's home and I like them, so I'm not going to leave them in the hands of someone uninformed. Cut to that weekend. My roster had me working 12-hour days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Come Friday night, my replacement didn't arrive. I waited. I sent a text message to the supervisor after 15 minutes, then called after 30. Left a message, and when they eventually called back, I could tell they had not found a replacement. I told them I'd stay until they did. This was, by that time, an hour after I was meant to finish, 10 p.m. Come 11, they call me and say they simply can't find a replacement. They offer a deal and say if I can stay and do the night shift, I can take the next shift off. It's pretty even, so you won't miss out, they said. Then they changed their tone and said, it's not really a request. We have no other option. Treat this as a direction. I reminded them it was a passive house, meaning you got half the hourly rate from midnight, but you could sleep in the bed provided, so I'd actually be taking a pay cut. They didn't know what else they could do, so I made a suggestion. I'd stay and do the night shift, but I wasn't going to give up my next shift. I was going to do that one as well. They agreed. It meant that they didn't need to find a replacement for me in the morning, so they thought it was a good deal for them. It was, however, an even better deal for me. It took a few emails over the weekend with the union to sort out the particulars, but what happened was this. Once I couldn't leave my work site because of a lack of replacement, I was on overtime. As this overtime was because of a direction, not voluntary, it remained in place until I went home. Because I didn't agree to drop my following day shift, my overtime continued till I ended on Saturday night. The upshot being that working 36 hours in a row resulted in the equivalent of 60 hours worth of pay. I was the first person to, as they say, pull this stunt, and word got around that if you didn't get replaced, you were actually the person who was in a position of power. It didn't take long until the department put a little more effort into training and employing extra staff, so something like this would never happen again. Not to me, at least. My daughter is demanding I pay her Ivy League college tuition with my retirement savings. I'm 40, male, and my wife is 40, female. We have a 17-year-old daughter who is in the stage in life where she needs to think about college. My wife and I have agreed that we will pay for her 2 years in community college in our town and 2 years in university to finish her bachelor's. My daughter was on board with this until recently. She now wants to go all 4 years to an Ivy League school because that's what her friends are doing apparently. We have plans of retiring early, and an extra $50,000 or so is really going to push us back on that, so I'm not on board with that idea. Also, it's not like she has tons of money saved to get an apartment elsewhere, so odds are we would have to pay for that as well. It's a firm no for me, which has made my daughter incredibly upset with me. She's been guilting my wife, and now she feels bad for her and thinks we should do it. Apparently, she thinks she's going to miss out on a huge opportunity and will feel excluded from her friend group. Community college is also lame in my daughter's mind, which is an incredibly privileged thing to say in my opinion. Big financial decisions in our marriage require a yes from both of us, and it has always been this way, but now my wife is upset with me too. Now mother-in-law is also involved, and I'm the villain to everyone. We could technically afford it, but as I said before, it would really push back our plans in life, which I'm not okay with. And keep in mind, I'm not forbidding her from doing it, it just won't be on my wife and I's dime. I'm completely indifferent to paying the same amount and her getting loans to cover the rest, should she really want to go that badly. I feel crazy for even posting this, because I don't see how I could be the jerk, but since everyone is mad at me, it does make me wonder. You're the jerk if you can afford it. My parents agreed to cover half of wherever I decided to go and made me apply to both cheaper schools and the expensive art schools I wanted to go to, as well as financial aid and scholarships. Then we sat down and plotted out the expenses for each one I was accepted into so they could really explain the financial situation to me. This is her first major adult decision. I think it's best to help her make her own decision. Also, I don't really believe that she said, "I want to be with my friends." That sounds like your interpretation.
Welcome aboard to our newest subscribers, Aubrey, Nee, and Viper. Do this, subscribe to the channel right now and tick the bell for all notifications, and you could get a shout out in our next video.